Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today, and welcome to the third Pause playlist, an educational empowerment series presented by Brown-Forman, my employer. If you're not familiar with Brown-Forman, we're the parent company of brands you know and love, like Jack Daniel's, Woodford Reserve, Herradura Tequila, so on and so forth. And our goal with this series is to create content that brings awareness to substance abuse and other mental health challenges that really present themselves in the hospitality industry. And if you didn't know, it is Alcohol Awareness Month. And so really we're just trying to draw awareness to some of the challenges that we face as those that love and work in the hospitality community, and really highlight some of the great work that's being done. So my name is Jordan Zimmerman. I am Brown-Forman's, there's a lot of syllables in this title, but I am the Premium Whiskey Education and Advocacy Lead. Shorthand, I manage our brand ambassador program. So I used to be one myself, and now manage the team that goes out and tells the stories of our products and makes friends with so many hospitality folks. I also manage the way we go to Tales of the Cocktail, Brooklyn Bar Convent, and all the fun things we finally get to do back in person this year. So that's what I do. But more importantly today, I am not the star today. Today we have someone well-versed in our topic today of burnout and self-awareness. That person is Joel Rivas. So Joel is the CEO and founder of Saint City Culinary, and he will be talking a little bit more about Saint City as we go forward today. So today we're just going to talk about recognizing the signs of burnout before they happen, hopefully, and some tools and habits that can be used to prevent further episodes of burnout, and making sure that we're aware of those signs. So a few things we want to make sure that you guys do. So if you're joining us today and you haven't already, I just want to thank all of our partners from the Brown-Forman side of things. I really, really want to thank Lush Life and Portland Cocktail Week. So if you are watching this and you haven't liked them on Facebook, do that. You can subscribe to their channel on YouTube, follow them on Instagram, and of course, feel free during the presentation today to comment, to ask questions, and there will be a PDF of resources available in the comment section for you all as well. And we would love for you to fill out those comment forms at the end of the session, and you can get yourself a Pause lapel pin. So for those of you who don't know, Brown-Forman functions, its responsibility actions really function under the Pause brand, if you will, which just encourages folks to take a moment and to ask, what does this make me feel? How am I feeling right now? What can I do to make myself feel better? Whether that's enjoy a cocktail with friends, to have a glass of water, to take a nap, to take a day off work, whatever that is, we encourage folks to pause and ask that questions of themselves. So with that, we will jump into our content today, and I will hand it over to Joel just to talk a little bit about who he is and what he does at Saint City Culinary.
Hey, Jordan. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I thank you to Brown-Forman for having me on, and the folks at Portland Cocktail Week. I always love being able to do anything I can with you guys in regards to bringing information to our hospitality and food and beverage service industry families. So thank you. So I'm Joel Rivas. I founded an organization, a nonprofit organization called Saint City Culinary Foundation 5 years ago, based in Texas. And the first program that we launched was our HERD program, which is nationally known, that focuses on mental health and wellness of those working in the hospitality and food and beverage industry. And we provide mental health resources, therapy resources, as well as medical and wellness resources for those that need it. This has just been a very launching this program and growing it has been such an important part of my life personally. Being someone I've struggled with addiction early in life, and also with mental health issues. And so just being able to now work with those in our service industry family and provide as many resources as we can for them is just my really my life's passion now, and what I am fortunate enough to get to do for the rest of my days. But yeah, it's great to be here.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for being here. And I think, today, while we could ask you to speak on a lot of topics, I think today we're focused on this concept of burnout. And I know you and I chatted a little bit earlier this week, and I think had a few threads that we kind of spun off in terms of what burnout means to us and maybe what the signs are. But from your work and what you've seen on your side, how would you maybe define burnout, or maybe give us a few key signs that folks might be able to learn to look for in themselves or in others that might indicate burnout? Do you have any feedback for us there?
Well, at first, it's important to recognize that that burnout isn't something for the longest time, especially in our industry. It's been classified a lot of times as you're either being too weak to do the job, or you just don't have enough passion or initiative. But make no mistake, burnout is an actual syndrome. The World Health Organization has included burnout in its IDC 11, and it is conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So it is something that comes from stress from your workplace that you have not taken care of, that you have not addressed. It's a very real thing that has very real repercussions in your life, not only physically but emotionally, behaviorally, and it's characterized by three dimensions, which is feelings of energy depletion and exhaustion. You have increased mental distance from your job, maybe something you once loved, or you have feelings of negativism, or you become more cynical about your job, which we see a lot as well, and just reduced professional efficacy. So it's something that we see a lot, especially in industries that involve people that give. So you see it a lot in doctors, in therapists, and people that maybe work in faith-based communities. You see it a lot in nonprofits, people who run nonprofits, and you see it a lot in the service industry with those who, by and large, have their psychological makeup is their emotional payoff is giving and serving and taking care of people. And that is something that they love to do, but because of a lot of times a lack of boundaries and a toxic workplace, and like I'm sure we'll talk about, a lack of self-awareness, those things combined and rolled together contribute to burnout. And but it's a very real thing and has very serious repercussions.
Oh, I love that definition. And I think, unfortunately for us, I think, choosing to have a career in the hospitality industry, sometimes it's amazing and I love it and I don't intend to ever leave, but I do think sometimes it comes with that double-edged sword. So here at Brown-Forman, I do a lot of talking for the powers that be about, how advocacy and trade advocacy and leaning into the hospitality industry, can really help us do our job well and better. And we always like to say that hospitality will save hospitality. But I think that when we're thinking about it in this lens of potential burnout, thinking about it as, hospitality can save hospitality, but it shouldn't be at the expense of the people offering the hospitality, if you will, because nothing is worth, there's no long-term hospitality industry without the long-term health of the people in it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's that's a great point. I think that it's not because of a lack of loving what we do. It's just a lack of, like I said, having those boundaries for it.
Right.
So,
And I think too, two things can be true at once, right? I always say that for me, I could have chosen a lot of other different careers. I think a lot of us could have chosen a lot of other different careers, and found a love for this by way of having to serve to make some money during college, or starting to wash dishes in high school because your parents owned a restaurant, so on and so forth, and finding a love for it, right? So we could have chosen something else. And the truth that I found out about myself, which again has played into burnout for me, has been I am better at my job when I'm passionate about what I do. Right. I'm not the kind of person that can go and kind of turn on at work and then turn off. I'm driven by a passion. Right. So for me, what I know about that is sort of a truth at the same time is that means that the hurts are going to hurt worse and the highs are going to be higher, because I care so deeply about what I do when I do go to work. And with that, sometimes that roller coaster for me, I did experience burnout quite aggressively during the pandemic. And for me, what I realized is instead of having sort of the roller coaster, which itself can be kind of dangerous, I didn't even want to strap in. I didn't even want to get on there, so that's interesting.
I think that happens a lot in this industry, especially. I think we see a lot of, especially at the beginning, milder symptoms, but at the end of it, when it becomes too much, you see a lot of people just check out completely for something that they once loved, and so. But again, it's not because it's a bad thing. It's not even a case where one necessarily needs to switch careers completely. A lot of times it's just getting some balance in their life and adjusting the sails and what they're doing and how they're living.
And with the work that you do, I know you do a lot of, mental health counseling, and I'm sure you've come across burnout in this industry before, but are there coping mechanisms that you generally coach people toward, or maybe, flags that you throw up to say, hey, perhaps you could try X or Y in terms of, in terms of sort of mitigating and managing cases of burnout?
Sure. I think that to start any of that is really to gain an understanding of who you are and gain a level of self-awareness. And self-awareness, a lot of times, not a lot of times, all the time, self-awareness requires a lot of honesty with yourself and what your weaknesses are and what your strengths are, and really becoming aware of instead of numbing, which a lot of times is what we do, and this is in a lot of careers, but especially in food and beverage and hospitality. Instead of numbing that feeling, working with a therapist, working, with the resources that you have available to you, to start learning what your body is doing and telling you, and learning what your mind is doing and telling you, and learning the whys behind it. And then from that point forward, being able to take some steps to preventing it. But self-awareness and knowing yourself and knowing your body is really a first step in recognizing those things early. And then from that point forward, just implementing things.
Yeah, I think that self-awareness is really important. And I think you made a good and really interesting comment, and something that just resonates with me personally around being able to feel and being able to sort of feel the things you're feeling. So, I'll get personal because as Brene Brown, if any of you are a Brene Brown fan, if you're not, I'm sorry, I'm about to quote her. She talks a lot about vulnerability, and she says, embrace the suck. and I love it. And I know she has way more brilliant things that people quote, but I love the embrace the suck moment. And for me, I actually went through a period where I realized that I had an inkling I was drinking too much, right? And for me, I brought that up. It was hard, and I brought that up with a therapist, and the therapist said, "What, why do you think even when you're home alone, you're drinking by yourself?" And I said, "I think it's because." And I don't know why this came out of my mouth, but it was so true. And it's something I've wrestled with. And I think, having conversations with folks in the hospitality community, I've heard them wrestle with it, say, I drank by myself because I didn't like to be alone with myself. And I think once I sort of worked with a therapist to take some of those, to integrate some practices and saying, okay, how can we take away some of that alcohol in times when you're by yourself so that you can actually sit with yourself and feel the things, so that if burnout is occurring, you have some idea it's occurring, right? I think that was a really powerful moment for me, just personally. So if any of you out there are ever saying like, I don't know if I could feel burnout because honestly, I just feel kind of numb all the time, or I'm wondering if that's something I'm struggling with. Know that like there's a lot of people in different parts of the industry who've had these experiences, and you don't have to be explicit about what you're going through. But I do think, making sure that when you're thinking about what you feel, if you can feel it, if you can't feel it, maybe we need to look at some, maybe there's some folks out there, resources that can kind of help you get to that place of exploration. But it's not easy. So I always say embrace the suck. And that was one of my favorite.
That's absolutely brilliant. That's because it is. It's not easy. It's and a lot of times it's really crappy to be that, to take a look inside and start unhashing a lot of trauma and things that have happened in the past, or even things that you don't like about yourself, and that doesn't. Now, I always tell people, don't think that there's a magic button that once you get past that it's going to be, it's going to be cherry for the rest of your life, because it's not. This is something you will struggle with, and you'll deal with, and you'll wrestle with for the rest of your life. But once you have that awareness and ability, and you can be that honest with yourself, and communicating with those around you, that people that you love, and what those issues are and how you're getting past it. Embracing the suck becomes a little easier, a little less painful. And I believe that there's a lot of self-accomplishment you feel when you're able to do that, and you start recognizing that, like, oh, I took this issue and I dealt with it, and I'm moving forward to work on it, and that goes through, that trickles down into every other part of your life, especially the workplace, and being really honest about what you do and what you're allowing to be done to you. And that, again, that goes back to preventing, burnout, which is setting hard boundaries, and knowing what your non-negotiables are. And it can be very simple things. It can be, for me personally, I have a rule. I don't do meetings before 10 a.m. my time. I don't, because I know I can't do I don't function well early in the morning. And if I push myself to, then whoever I'm meeting with is going to get, 60% of me. And for many years of my life, I worked in, I would do 8 a.m. meetings and 7:45 meetings and it wasn't until I got to a point where I was like, I can't do that. So it's knowing your non-negotiables, is knowing what your boundaries are and setting them. And listen, I realize for those out there watching, it is not easy in the industry a lot of times to set those hard boundaries, because of maybe stipulations, hours, and those types of things in your workplace, or maybe you're in a toxic environment. But the road to preventing burnout and taking care of your mental and physical wellness, it really does start with drawing those lines in the sand for yourself, and really sticking to them as much as you can. So.
I love that. And I think that's excellent advice. And I think, on the flip side of the coin is someone who works for a corporate company, right? For me, it's for the job I have now, right? I was a brand ambassador before. And if you ask 17 people what a brand ambassador does, you'll get 17 different answers, right? But for me in my job here, while it changes over time, I had the luxury of looking at a job description, right? And it told me what I was expected to accomplish, right? And kind of the limits of my role. And I would encourage anyone out there, whether you have a corporate role, whether it's brand ambassador, so it's half corporate, kind of corporate, very corporate, depends on who you ask again, or you're working as that bartender, you're clocking in, you're clocking out on an hourly shift, and maybe you don't make your schedule. I think one of the things I would encourage folks to do is especially if you're feeling like you work 90 hours a week and you don't get the job done, it's probably because the edges of the job aren't defined, right? So I tell people, you need your non-negotiables. I love that. And I think it's always fair to go to your employer and say, hey, can we discuss the expectations, of this role? Like, tell me what you need for this to be successful for you, right? Because I think that kind of conversation, especially in this work environment where everybody's hurting for talent right now, I think making sure that, when we're committing to a place, or even when we've already committed, but we're kind of exploring if it's right for us now that our lives have shifted, having those conversations about saying, what does success look like for this place? And does that resonate with my non-negotiables? Is that in conflict? And if it is, I think taking that time, taking that pause and saying, okay, can these things come together? Or by committing to something that we have different views of what success looks like for my personal life and for my professional life, it doesn't make sense to look for something different. So I would always encourage folks out there. It's easier for me to say in a corporate role, and I totally understand that. But I do think, know that you have power as an employee in the hospitality industry, especially right now.
Yeah, 1,000%. I've had a lot of these conversations over the past year. And I'm very frank and honest in saying, that I agree with you, have those conversations with your employer and be like, what are the boundaries of this? What am I expected to do? Because for a lot of times we see bartenders that you're bartending, you're also the bar back. Oh, you're the manager this week. And you're the key holder. And by the way, can you pick up running our Instagram account this week? And all the while you are making $275 an hour plus tips, and still having to tip out people. So it's having that conversation is so vitally important. And I will say this with my last breath: if you have that conversation with your employer and they're not having it and they're not listening, you're in the wrong place. And it's time to go find another environment. No matter how cool they are about other things, if they are not concerned or even enough to have that conversation and listen to what you have to say, you're in the wrong place. Now, whether or not your non-negotiable is your mental health, is up to you, and that's your call. If you make so much money there that you want to mortgage your mental health on that, that's your call. But if you're working for someone that is really putting that doesn't take the human sustainability part of the industry seriously, it's a toxic environment, and it's not going to be a great place to work in the long run. And that's just it comes from somebody who's worked in the industry for almost 30 years. So
I love that. I love that you said human sustainability, right? And I think again, it goes back to, look, I work for a large supplier, right? And this is my third large supplier, and well, second large supplier, anyway, third supplier. Either way, I think with this, if bartenders don't want to bartend, and you know restaurant owners don't want to open restaurants, and barbacks don't want to barback, like we don't have an industry. Like, so human sustainability, if this is something you're really passionate about being in, this community, we want you here. And I think also I would encourage you all to to speak to folks who work for companies like mine, and talk to us about what you need, about how the industry is changing. A lot of times when we step out from behind the bar and we step in front of the bar, I think we're a lot of time we may not do the best job. I hope we do. We may not do the best job of listening, to what each new era of hospitality, professionals really need. So being able to raise your hand and say, what I would love is if a supplier did X, right? Not your labor. We'll try to figure it out without you. But if we're not figuring it out, definitely tell us, because we can't be successful without the success of bars and restaurants. And honestly, the world would be a hell of a lot less fun. So it's a reason why we're in it. But
yeah, 1,000%. We see that from we see that level of, I'm sure I've talked to reps who have dealt with burnout and they're having, mental health issues. I've talked to, of course, people in the industry, owner operators, especially over the past couple of years, that have, gone through the ringer with it. A lot of independent owner operators that I love dearly have had a hard couple of years as well. So it's affected, it's affected everybody that's touched the industry in one way, shape, or form.
Definitely. Well, Joel, you do a lot with, one-on-one counseling. You do a lot with group sessions. And this is something I'm totally springing on you out of the blue, but I'd love to touch on the concept of, or the concept or importance of community, because I think here we're all coming from different sectors of the same sphere, if you will. And for you and kind of the work that Saint City Culinary does, is there any, what do you think about the power of community to kind of combat things like burnout, or encourage self-awareness? Is there any sort of work that you guys do specifically there?
And is there any work we do with the community?
Well, no, not with the community. Just you know what? I'm extrapolating a little bit. I'm kind of leaning into this sort of this concept of community, as we all, instead of, I guess, as the opposite side of the coin to self-awareness, right? How does self-awareness and play into community, and how could we maybe come together to help each other recognize or kind of combat things like burnout?
I see. I think a couple of things. One, as service industry folks tend to be drawn to the industry because of a sense of community and a sense of belonging and a sense of family. For a lot of times when I was 18 and 19 and working as a line cook, that my only meal of the day was my shift meal. Getting, kicked out of the place where I was living, I ended up crashing on the couch of people that I worked with. When you keep those same hours, you end up socially hanging out with all the people that you work with as well. So, and it's like being part of a tribe. And I think that's one of the huge draws of the food and beverage and hospitality industry is that having that tribe and family feel and being part of something when you're not, it's not a gang, but it's like it's like a pirate ship of lost boys. And so, but with that community, especially in terms of, owner operators, brands, and purveyors, there is a responsibility to take care of the people that push that community, push that industry forward. And it's been very, what's the word? It's been it's been great to see so many brands and have really embraced that community responsibility to take care of our tribe and take care of our whole. And I was having this conversation 5-6 years ago with some brands that were alcohol brands, and they were nervous about, I know you go, y'all talk about mental health and this, is this going to be a right fit for us? And we want to help you guys, but we don't want to make it look bad on y'all's end or what. And for me, I'm like, the people we serve as an organization, those people sell your products every day, and it is at some point there is a responsibility as a community to take care of these workers that have their hands on those products every day, and not in any sort of exchange. And it's been great to see there's been several brands that haven't, they're like, we're not going to donate because we want you to push our brand. We want to, we're going to donate because it's the right thing to do as a community. And it's been really wonderful to see some of these larger organizations and brands come together as a community and act responsibly, taking care of our workers that work in that. But I do believe that as a community, there's a responsibility that from all around to make sure that these folks are taken care of. And if not, the industry will suffer, and it will, because without that front line, there is no industry, and people are seeing it. I can't, there's an incredible chef and restaurateur here in San Antonio named Stephen Bowers, who says that the dishwasher is the liver of the restaurant, because once the dishwasher's out, that within 10 to 15 minutes, everything else starts shutting down in the restaurant. And that there is a vital importance to taking care of that front line, because once we start losing, and as restaurants have seen and bars have seen, once we start losing bar backs and bartenders and line cooks and servers and those frontline workers, that there's nobody to take care of their customers, and they can't keep the restaurant open. So, but yeah, I hope that. Sorry, I get real.
No,
that's another point. They like.
So
I get real passionate about that.
They're important, and I think when people, I think that kind of passion comes through, right? It's why we do. It's why we chose this industry. We didn't choose this industry because it was easy,
Yeah.
And we may have chosen it because it was fun, but like reality will quickly set in that like not everything about everything we do all day is fun, right? Yeah. Now I think that it does help that sometimes we tell others in our lives, wherever they are, parents, colleagues, I don't know, friends from high school, what we do, and we probably have the sexiest jobs out there, so it doesn't hurt. But I think the truth, and we all know, is that probably a lot of us have looked at each other, while we're deep in the trenches and went, why did I sign up for this, right? And I think it's because of that collective passion. And I think, for me, one of the things that I try really hard to do from a supplier lens is have these conversations and be really honest about kind of what I've gone through. So for me, the power of community, one, it allows me to be vulnerable because the responses, knock on wood, have so far been super positive when I'm like, oh, I struggled with alcohol addiction. Oh, I had burnout. Oh, I had a great job and was paid through the pandemic, and I'm super lucky, but I was also in a corner of my apartment crying. I've been there in a lot of ways, and I won't ever have anyone's specific experience, but I do think another sort of facet of the power of the community is to say, we're here to support each other in terms of the groups of bartenders and big suppliers, but I think we're also here to support kind of each other on an individual basis. So one of my things has been big to say, I've gone through a lot of stuff, and if anyone has ever felt kind of the same way or any of this resonates, know that our industry is large and small at the same time. So there's microcosms of community, concentric circles of community, if you will. And I think we're always able to kind of reach across the circle, reach across the boundary, and, have conversations with folks that maybe you're not directly connected with. So that's really
think just as individuals acting every day with empathy and grace, and the people that we talk to and speak to and deal with is important, but also to have that for yourself as well. Give yourself a break, and that's a huge part. We a lot of times we have high expectations for ourselves, and it's okay not to be okay. I mean, you hear that all the time. And that's just, having that grace for yourself is huge as well.
I love the term grace. I feel like we could talk for an hour about grace alone. Right.
Absolutely.
But, just saying, and I think, part of it is we are, if we're watching from America, but I think even globally, we've built the idea that to work is to earn money, to earn more money is to be better. So essentially what we've drawn a line between is productivity and self-worth. And it's really dangerous, I think, to draw that line. So for me, and that actually became very clear for me when I had probably my deepest point of burnout during the pandemic. And I remember, it was like a Tuesday. Like I'd gotten through Monday and I was feeling great. And I remember being on my couch because I was working from my couch at this point, and opening my computer, and I got through half of one email and I stared at it for 45 minutes. And I was just like, I don't even have the energy. I can't finish this email. And it's not that I was like bored or that I couldn't. My fingers didn't work. I didn't even close my computer. I think I just rolled over and stared at the ceiling for a couple of hours. Like I could not do anything. And it was really hard for me to say, it was really hard for me to stop the internal conversation of, you're being lazy. You have to finish this. What the hell are you doing? You are still paid. You're working during a pandemic. You're so lucky, right? There's some of the things that I started to tell myself that almost maybe a non-healthy parental relationship might tell you of, you don't deserve the time off. You are so lucky. You should be thankful. And I think that came at a time when I wasn't recognizing the signs before I got to that point, right? So I think grace is something that I go back to, and I have a few mantras that annoy me when I use them, a lot of times, but I think it's something that I continually have to kind of talk about, in the back of my head around. You're not a failure, you're doing okay.
Absolutely. We need to normalize telling that voice to F off. We really do. It's because that voice can be worse than any friend or parent, or a lot of that voice can be the toughest on a lot of times, especially when you equate hard work with getting a paycheck and where you're at in life. And so you take that back to somebody that works, like I said, somebody that's running a bar by themselves and, getting into work at 3:00 in the afternoon and knowing that they're not going to get out of work until 3:34 in the morning. That's if everybody clears out by 2 a.m. when they're supposed to. And so they work their ass off, make $2.50 an hour plus tips, which is not a living wage. And so they're working really hard. There are a lot of blood, sweat, and tears goes into what they do on a daily basis and a weekly basis. And because it's not, it sometimes doesn't yield the money, they look at where they're at finance-wise in life and because those things aren't maybe adding up to the expectation they had, by the time they're 26 or something in their head, that voice kicks in and can be real harsh. And we just, folks that have a platform like us need to just normalize more and more that tell that voice to go to hell. That's everyone's journey is different, and it just, and it's okay to be where you're at and be present where you're at. But if you are not happy and you're in an environment that's not supporting you, it's also okay to look for something else and move forward.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that. And sometimes change can be hard, I think, especially for people who maybe feel like they don't have a safety net.
Sure.
And I think that's where, when you're talking about burnout and self-awareness, I think sometimes the hardest, especially for like underrepresented communities, is asking for help, because we were told that we had to achieve and do it by ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of focus on figuring it out, right? Especially in an industry like this, figure it out, right? You're in the middle of service, figure it out. You figure it out, right? But here's the thing: is I think what a lot of us do is we take figure it out and we add a word that was never meant to be there, right? We all have to figure it out, but I think we add the word alone. So we say figure it out alone.
I love that.
And so in our heads, we tell ourselves we have to figure it out alone, right? And I think especially for those of us and I think a lot of us have bigger safety nets than others. I have a bigger safety net than some folks, right? So for me, to just tell someone, oh, totally make a change, right, may seem daunting to someone, but I think where the change can come in is to be able to say, like, if you need help to make the change, if your safety net's not there, maybe your safety net is this community and is people who've gone through it, who can offer, you ever get stuck in Louisville, come hang out in my basement. You're welcome. I think there's a lot of folks in this community who'd be willing to help you build that safety net if you don't have it for it, because we can figure it out. But I think too many times we convinced ourselves it had to be by ourselves, and there's a lot of power.
1,000%. And I think we saw a lot of that during the pandemic, that people who are in a very social, environment, and they're, usually extroverts, and all of a sudden, but they live paycheck to paycheck and day to day by tips, saw that come to a screeching halt with no end of when this is going to happen. And a lot of them were stuck by themselves because of, mandates. A lot of them had to suffer by themselves in that. And so, but on the flip side, even during that, we saw so many people in our community, and I know our cities all over the US saw this, that there were restaurateurs, there were people that, restaurant workers that bonded together and really helped feed and take care of people that worked in our industry that were suffering from it. And it was, so it's just, a lot of times it can feel alone, and people attach that word to it a lot. And I agree. I'd love that. I'm stealing that from you, Jordan. So.
Oh, we got to figure it out, but it doesn't have to be alone. Thank goodness. Because I think one of my favorite things I figured out through therapy, thank goodness for therapy. One of my favorite things I figured out through therapy was, and by the way, it was telehealth that was free, that was offered free to me for 4 weeks, where I started going back, right? And I've been in and out of it for a while, but thank God through therapy, what I learned was that I was not the strongest person in the room. Whew, what a weight off the shoulders. I was never going to be, so I didn't have to pretend to be. That was nice. But anyway, so as we kind of think about moving forward, we're kind of going into a different time now, different but same but different, right? So we're seeing restrictions lift. We're seeing a lot of that stress kind of fall on those of us who do serve in public spaces, because there's a lot of different ideas about what's right and what's appropriate and what's safe, right? So as we kind of go into this new realm, from the work that you do, Joel, is there any tips or watch outs for folks who are jumping back behind those bars, or have been there the whole time? If you're in Florida or Texas, bless you.
Sure.
But are there any tips, tricks, or maybe just quips you'd like to someone to remember as they kind of navigate this? Oh God, I hate the word new normal, but that came out of my mouth.
At least you didn't say pivot. So.
Oh, right. We're gonna retire that word. We're done. Yeah.
I think going into this coming year, really figure out what your non-negotiables are when it comes to your workspace, and when it comes to your life and your relationships, and draw those lines in the sand. Normalize drawing those lines in the sand. It's okay. This is the only life we have. This is the only body and mind that we have for this, these trips around the sun. So take care of yourself. No one's going to take care of you like you're going to take care of you. So normalize those non-negotiables. The other thing is thinking in small steps when you're taking these things. So whether it be sobriety and someone is wanting to do that, or whether it is just taking a break and a step back from a particular lifestyle of using substances, give yourself small, achievable goals. Just say, you know what, I'm doing 1 month differently. Out of the 12 months this year, I'm going to do 1 month differently. And I'm, whatever that may be during that month, or I'm doing 1 week differently. Giving yourself those small achievable goals and getting that balance in your life is important. Another thing is also just focusing on balance, and I tell people all the time that is your mental health, your physical health, and your spiritual health, whatever that may be. That may be going out into nature and meditating. It may be going to a mosque or a church. Whatever that is in your life, your spiritual health is as important as your mental health and physical health, and taking care of those three and getting that balance in your life is important. And then most of all, just being kind to yourself and giving yourself grace during this time period, and not rushing back into it all at once is also important. Do things that you love. Work for people that you love. Work for people that love the people that hold up and run the industry. So another just really, really important part.
Work for people that you love. I love that. So important, and they're out there, I promise. So Joel, I mean, before we close, I'd love to hear kind of a little bit more. I know we briefly touched on it, but just a little bit more about Herd and Saint City Culinary, kind of the services you guys offer,
Sure.
and for folks here who maybe aren't as familiar with you, where you operate and how they can kind of what they might find if they navigate to your sites and your resources.
Yeah, a great place to start is our website, iheardyou.org. Which gives all of the resources that we have regarding mental health and wellness in the industry. We have an incredible group of online moderators that is Heard Online is run by Amy Ward, who a lot of people are familiar with that work in the industry. She's just absolutely incredible. But we have a Zoom online support group that happens every Monday evening at 6 p.m. And you are welcome to listen. You don't even need to turn your camera on, or you can participate. But it's a great place to just start and dip your toe into that and get to know. And then we also, depending, right, differs from state to state, but we have therapy resources, and are able to either contact people with our partnering counselor services that can be low cost or no cost, or work on a sliding scale with how much you make, provide you with therapy. And then Herd Health, we work with a third-party provider that works with us in providing, for those that don't have health insurance but just need to see a doctor, it's primary care physician access via telehealth. It's $29 a month, and people can at least see a doctor and get prescriptions, referrals, get labs ordered, things like anything you would see a primary care physician for. And it's for somebody that doesn't have insurance that works in the industry. It's a very attainable way of, at least, if you have a respiratory infection or something you need blood pressure issues and need prescriptions, it's a good way at least to have a doctor that you can communicate with and help you maintain that. Because a lot of times that physical wellness piece is just paying attention to that and getting some preventative help and exercise, as well as having a doctor check in on you from time to time is important. And we can help with all of that. So
that's amazing. Well, you're truly doing, you're doing work that is so desperately needed. So first of all, thank you for committing yourself to that. And you intimately know it from your past. So we're so thankful I'm thankful to be able to kind of speak with you today and partner here on this. And I want to thank as well the Lush Life crew. Always a pleasure to work with you guys. And Joel, I know you will be making some special appearances through Saint City Culinary at our in-person event. Yay! Through the Lush Life crew as well. So for those of you who are signed up for Portland Cocktail Week and Camp Run-A-Muck coming up, know that Joel is definitely an integral part of that, and he can speak a little more on that. But I'm excited to, I guess, maybe steal the thunder and announce that. But that's really exciting because I know that there's some really deserving folks of these in-person experiences, and many more than they can take. So I'm sure we'll see you in the future. But that's exciting as well. Yeah. Well,
awesome.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, before we close, again, I just want to thank everyone who took the time to tune in today. Joel, you are a wealth of knowledge. I can't wait to hang out and have a cocktail with you in the future.
Yes.
And to those of us who've joined in today, know that my digital door is always open. My door in Louisville is always open. And if anyone's found kind of the vulnerability refreshing today and just feel like you want a listening friend, Joel is, I'm sure that person, he has a whole community of people who can help do that. And I am always here as well. So with that, Joel, any final words for us?
No, just thank you everybody for this opportunity. Anytime that we have a platform to talk to people in the industry is great. And thank you to Brand Foreman also for being an organization that supports these things. It's huge and it's important. And I'm grateful for organizations like yours. So
we're grateful for the work that you do. So thanks everyone. We appreciate your time today.
Thanks.